And when you're not speaking, your microphone has to be off.
I ask you to please keep earpieces on the ear or in the designated area away from the microphones. Please refrain from touching the microphone stem when the microphone is live. Please maintain a consistent distance from the microphone when speaking. Avoid adjusting earpiece volume, especially to maximum settings when near a live microphone. And finally, when you're speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you're not speaking, your mic should be on mute. So, with that, let's proceed to the agenda. So let's start off the agenda, minutes from the previous meeting. Madam,
Sorry.
Ms. Finlay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note under the minutes where it says security matters that the Conservatives did ask in that discussion that House administration try to find offsetting savings in other areas, and I think that should be mentioned in the minutes.
Great, we can add that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other changes or modifications to the minutes? Seeing none, do we have approval for the minutes? Thank you, Ms. Finlay. And see a consensus for that. Item number 2, business arising from previous minutes. Seeing none, we adopt that. Do we see ask for any dissent? Seeing none. Oops, Mr. Good. Seeing none, then number 3, mise à jour
Update of the working group on LTVPE. So I will give the floor to the Vice President to lead us in the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Again, as chair of the working group, I'm back today on behalf of the working group to update the board on our recent meeting of February 9th and to bring forward recommendations and endorsement on the Block 2 and Confederation building projects. The largest ones we're going to be discussing outside of Center Block. This will be a short briefing, but allow the board to keep up with timely key decisions for the LTVP program. Comme vous vous souvenez peut-être...
To maybe remember, it is the redevelopment of entire block across from Parliament Hill. It's bounded by Metcalfe, O'Connor, Wellington, and Sparks Streets. The redevelopment focuses on providing parliamentary space at either end of the block, with the east and for the Senate and the west, and for the House of Commons. At the center of the block will be the Indigenous Peoples Space, IPS, which is not currently part of the redevelopment project. The space that will accommodate the House of Commons will initially serve as swing space for the rehabilitation of the Confederation building. In the long term, it will provide the permanent space for growth as outlined in the Fair Representation Act. For these two separate but interrelated projects, we have 2 specific recommendations for the board's consideration and approval today, including endorsement of the Block 2 House of Commons core functional requirements, an endorsement to investigate a one-phase approach for the rehabilitation of the Confederation building.
The architectural completion competition that reflected general requirements, a more thorough review of the core requirements has been completed. Considering the site capacity of Block 2 and the initial strategy of a 2-phased rehabilitation of the Confederation building, the following minimum core requirements for the House of Commons are proposed. 94 parliamentary office units, a secure entrance, a cafeteria, a connection to the Block 2 library at 125 Sparks in the Valor building, operational services area, and a loading dock. The working group recommends endorsement of the House of Commons core requirements, acknowledging the program may evolve as further project planning continues for the Confederation Rehabilitation Program. As the overall project updates on Block 2, PSPC has confirmed that the schematic design phase was initiated in the spring of 2023 and is now at 20%. Plan to advance to 50% by July 2024. The construction management contract was awarded in January of 2024, and some construction is planned to commence in September of 2024 of this year. En ce qui concerne le projet de
With regard to the Confederation Building Rehabilitation Project, it is currently in the planning stages. The Confederation Building is the largest building in our inventory, housing parliamentary office units, and is currently at the end of its life cycle and in need of a complete rehabilitation. As mentioned, the PSPC plan that was approved in 2017 had envisioned the rehabilitation of the Confederation Building in multiple phases. The working group has been informed by PSPC that they have now identified an opportunity to rehabilitate this building in one phase, which represents a potential for significant costs and scheduled savings. The proposed advantages are a saving of approximately 4 years in project schedule, a potential significant cost reduction by avoiding sunk costs, and of our premiums, reduce the escalation and reduce risk allowance, and a reduction of occupant disruption and avoidance of multiple moves over time. The LTVP working group agrees that the proposed single-phased approach would be advantageous, and it seeks the board's endorsement for the project team to proceed with investigating this option. This would entail returning to the working group and subsequently the board with the findings and options for the remainder of the swing space required to undertake the Confederation Building Rehabilitation Project as a single phase.
The working group meets regularly and is very engaged in a detailed view of the issues on many of the items across the LTVP, and we continue to be confident that the requirements of parliamentarians are being taken into consideration. We anticipate being able to update the board on the Block 2 design and the results of the Confederation Building investigation in the near future, as well as the number of other key LTVP projects decisions. And I'd be happy to take any questions or elaborate on any of the information provided so we can confirm the proposed endorsements. I also have Jennifer Garrett and Susan Colbut here to help me answer those questions if needed.
Thank you very much, Chris. And so a quick change from upstairs to be down here in time for the presentation. I have two people on the list right now, Mr. McKinnon, followed by Ms. Finlay, and by Mr. Julian. Mr. McKinnon.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. D'Entremont, for guiding us so skillfully through the activities of our working group. And as usual, we are proud. And I'd also like to thank Madam Colbert, Madam Garrett for their commitment. I know this project is moving along quite smoothly, and we're always keen to hear your updates. I do favor these. I support these initiatives explained today, except for one issue that I believe is essential that I raised already during our previous discussions with the working group, and it's the temporary spaces where MPs would be while the Confederation Building is not available. I continue to believe that the members and their personnel that have moved from the Confederation Building could be temporarily lodged at Block 2 if the Senate accepts to stay where they are, and the spaces around the Senate buildings for some time while the renovations on Confederation are completed. and we would avoid moving MPs much further away on Queen Street. I think it's an issue of cost and proximity of the MPs to the Hill. I think this issue has to be resolved in discussion with the Senate in the long run. Beyond that, I do recognize that some of the savings that could flow from this phase of redevelopment of the Confederation building. And we will always look forward to these updates on Block 2. And it's always a source of pride for the city and the parliament. So I don't know if you wanted to add something. I can just say a few things. Our priority concerns the MPC and the House. We want to provide them the opportunity to occupy spaces, office spaces in the long term. We would not want to see them moving too often in the future while setting up Block 2. We will try our best to negotiate with the Senate to make sure that we do have a priority in the choices made. Any comments?
To add part of the key of completing and achieving savings, which come from time in the Confederation rehab, is associated, it's in a significant range, but to have in a one-phased approach, the key to that strategy is finding appropriate swing space. We're very aware, and that will be part of the broader analysis that's brought forward and back to this committee ultimately for decision. We are leaving no stone unturned with the work that we're doing with both the House of Commons and the Senate administrations to determine what those options would be, and we're considering all options at this point. And then once we've got some viable options, we will then proceed with the appropriate financial verifications to round out a final recommendation on a 1 or 2 phase strategy that we'll bring back, hopefully in the fall timeframe.
Thank you. Ms. Finlay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted a clarification. You had a slide up about Confederation building and it referred to MC 2017. Does that mean memo to cabinet 2017? Is that what that reference is there as opposed to a recommendation of this board?
Or Susan, or who was it?
Jennifer. Yeah.
Jennifer? Okay.
Yes, part of the structure that we have to go in executing the long-term vision and plan is to actually get cabinet approval. So that MC reference in the documentation is a reference to a cabinet approval.
Back in 2017.
Yes.
Right. So with this single phase approach, which to me makes sense, it would be less expensive and take a shorter amount of time. And we're talking about additional swing space and offices. I guess it led me to think with the embracing of a hybrid workspace for the public service that there may be offices available than less occupied government office buildings, which could be looked to for some of that additional swing space. Is that part of your considerations?
Thank you very much for the question. And the challenge with what we're facing is Parliament has a very physical geographic location. And so we have very tight geographical boundaries upon which we want to make sure that you have office space and easy access, for example, for votes and things like that. So one of the challenges we will have, quite honestly, with the Confederation swing space is finding viable swing space that makes sense for members of Parliament to get to where they need within the parliamentary precinct. There aren't a lot of government-owned spaces through that reduction program that are in that physical geographical area. If there were to be flexibility on the part of the House of Commons to expand those geos, perhaps, but right now we're working with, based on your parliamentary operational needs, the requirements, the furthest we've gone to date is down to Queen Street.
Just one more aspect, Mr. Chair. I know the gym in Confederation Building is used by a lot of members, so is there some ideas for options for a replacement gym while that building is closed?
Scopa.
The intent is to replace the gym. We just don't have a location for it right now, and ideally, we would like to make that gym available in a building that's occupied by MPs. So that's sort of on the next level of study. We'll come back with solutions for that.
Okay. Thank you for all your hard work. I know there's a lot of detailed, long hours, so thank you all for that.
Good questions. Mr. Julien.
Mr. Julien, thank you, Chair. I would like to thank you and your full team for the work you've carried out. How many units are we talking about here? How many parliamentary office in the Confederation building is anticipated? About a rough figure?
One of the largest buildings that houses parliamentary office units.
Alors, c'est vraiment le problème.
So the issue here, so you're talking, the issue is 60 offices per now that were not envisaged. But the question I would like to ask on that, if we have a Senate that is displaced towards downtown, closer to the market, is there a possibility of negotiating with the Senate so they take other offices that are closer to the Senate on a temporary basis, or the temporary Senate, which is the former train station in Ottawa, and then maybe taking up some offices in the Victoria building? Has this issue been factored in? Madam Garrett.
So I would say, in fairness, and I certainly do not want to speak for the Senate and their requirements, we're early days in studying what the one-phase strategy could look like in terms of those swing space options. So it would be too early for me to actually say deliberately on any particular building what our strategy is. What I can say is that the House of Commons ourselves and the Senate have started coordinated discussions on discussing all of those options, and all the buildings within the portfolio are being referenced and mentioned during those discussions.
Okay, thank you. The other question I wanted to ask was around certainly what was a major challenge in the West Block renovation, which is asbestos. I'm presuming that is going to be a problem with Confederation Building.
Ms. Garrett?
We've yet to do detailed investigations on the quantities, but I think it's safe to say we can be guaranteed that we're going to run into designated substances in a building of this age that will have to be remediated.
Yeah, thank you for that. I support the recommendation of doing it in one phase because of that. It doesn't make sense if we're talking about substances that, like asbestos, that can cause major health problems to try to phase in a renovation to Confederation. So I certainly support the two recommendations and look forward to further discussions when you come back to the BOIE at a later date. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Julien. Mr. Scheer.
Yes, I apologize for asking you to just walk me through it very, hopefully simply. Right now with Block 2, if we do go with a one-phase approach, does Block 2 have enough capacity if the Senate didn't have any usage of it? Is there enough space in Block 2 to accommodate everybody from Confed?
Ms. Garrett?
It comes close to being able to accommodate.
Okay. Like, what are we talking? Like, because I'm looking.
Except you're off.
Yeah. Well, if I have to end up back in Confed, I've done something wrong. But no, because like I'm just picturing like a three-part move. You know, if the Senate moves into Block 2 and some move from Confed to Block 2, and then we have to get a significant amount of swing space, it seems to me that if the senators are where they are now, they could accommodate a little bit more patience. We could avoid a great deal of real estate shopping or, you know, costs associated with that. And I think we should have a minimal amount of movements. It's very expensive to pack things up and to negotiate leases. I think we should really not just kind of look at it kind of broadly, but maybe crunch the numbers and say how much savings would be associated with continuing with the senators where they are, allowing everyone from Confed to go in with minimal swing space if that is needed, and actually have some numbers we can compare and then go to the Senate with and say, look, this would be a significant savings if we could do it this way.
Mr. Dotrell?
What I'll say to that one is that I think we at LTVP have an opportunity to look at that very, very closely, and just to sort of make put it in here. I mean, I think I have a really good team around me, and good members, and some of the members on this board are actually on the LTVP as well. So I think we should have that discussion there to make sure that we have those right numbers. And I think what you're proposing there, I think, is well within our purview of trying to figure out.
Okay, so just to clarify, what I would be proposing is that a pretty meaningful study be done. Not that we spend a lot of money on the study, but like actually kind of, pulling out the calculators and some kind of a realistic cost benefit analysis. Okay, thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Madame de Bellefeuille.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From the get-go, I would like to congratulate our two project managers. I noticed that you're women, and it's quite encouraging to see that women managing such significant renovation projects around our Parliament building. So I congratulate you. The Bloc supports the two proposals. I'll take seriously Mr. McKinnon's argument when he says moving the MP's offices towards Queen Street. My problem here relates to security, safety. There's increased security measures based on what we have experienced over the past weeks, the past months. Having MPs, the issue of where MPs live, there are security aspects involved. Is that something that you looked at, explored? If the Senate doesn't want to stay a little bit longer where they are housed now, and that we have to go all the way to the Queen Street stop, have you looked into some of these aspects relating to security? Madame Garrett, go ahead.
Me parler dans ma langue que je vous ai posé ma question?
Oui.
Can you speak in the language that I asked the question in? Yes, I would appreciate that. First of all, on the Parliament Hill, the truth is that in the future there will be at least 50% of parliamentarians working in the Parliament Hill on both sides of Wellington Street. So right now we are still studying that. We are trying to find solutions for security measures that cover the entire parliamentary precinct. And that's our strategy for each project. There are security needs that are taken into account. And we are working on these with the different management teams in the Senate, all management. And we try to analyze the needs, the security needs for each building, and where that fits into the global strategy. For these interim buildings, for the Senate, for example, each building can be a permanent investment or a temporary investment. We are trying to take into account the security needs to offer protection to all MPs, all parliamentarians. And the strategy so far is to consolidate the Senate into 3 permanent buildings. But the phase relating to the Confederation building requires that we study all options, but at each stage, the issue of security is a top priority. Is that clear enough for you? Okay, I would like to congratulate you for the efforts you make in speaking French. And maybe you should come to the BOIE more often to practice. That's how you will improve. I thank your efforts to answer in the language in which I asked the question. Mr. McKinnon. So everyone has expressed their opinion. I think we should enshrine what has been proposed today with an asterisk, if you want, that there is this issue that is still unsettled, which seems quite reasonable, that the Senate should accept to stay put. They have offices that are quite decent, and it would be closer to the temporary buildings for the Senate compared to Block 2. I think it's very reasonable to offer these proposals, but as far as moving the projects ahead, I think everything should run smoothly. Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. I agree with you. I think there is consensus on these two things with an asterisk relating to the points raised by yourself, Mr. Shea, Madame de Belfort, Madame Finley too. So we'll be taking all that into account. Mr. D'Entremont, do you have some some final words? No, thank you. So do we have consensus on this? Good, thank you.
Maintenant, on va passer à la...
So let's go to point 4, professional and political development budgets. And we have Paul Saint-Georges, who's very well known amongst all of us, Caroline Evangelidis, and Jose Fernandez.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Talking to the office to have the authority to implement certain policies relating to the professional development of the MPs, senior management, and people working in the National Office offices. In December 2022, at the end of a pilot project, the office approved the permanent setting up of professional development budgets for its employees. And following consultations carried out with the caucuses, the administration will propose policy changes that would be retroactive to the 1st of April 2024. The proposed changes would facilitate and support the professional development of these employees.
Will further support employee access to professional development by expanding the eligibility of travel expenses, including those incurred for trainers. It will also allow expenses for group training organized by House officers and members responsible for National Caucus research offices, and will also expand the eligibility to short-term employees. In addition, there will be an expansion of the eligibility to employees who work for one or more members and are paid a minimum of 15 hours per week. And finally, it will provide access to travel resources to eligible employees traveling unaccompanied on special trips. These policy changes would not require supplemental funding, as there is capacity within existing budgets. Mr. Speaker, this concludes my presentation, and we welcome any questions from the board. No questions.
Ms. Finley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just thinking that these services are somewhat underutilized. I mean, my understanding is only about 16% of MPs take this up. So I've been trying to encourage in our own caucus. Some people seem to be well aware of the ability to access this, and others don't seem as aware. So I've been trying to say this is a way for, you know, your staff to get the training they need, etc. But given that reality, are you able to provide or estimate a ballpark figure for how much money the House administration spends on administering all of the unique rules and elements of the professional development budgets? Because I'm aware that less than $300,000 was spent on actual claims, and I'm wondering what ratio the overhead and administration costs might be.
Through Mr. Speaker, thank you, Ms. Finley, for the question. We don't have a calculation specific to the cost from administration. What we do know is through costing that we have done over the last several months, approximately 12% of overheads is related to administering services across the House of Commons. With this specific submission, what we plan on doing is minimizing man hours to implement. So, for example, setting up specific codes within the system that would direct a member to select an expense, so that would guide that expense directly to the professional development budget. We also have embedded within our system a control of those MOBs perhaps that are getting close to maximizing the budgets, so that we can follow up with the members and ensure that there's some guidance or questions in terms of the eligibility, whether or not it belongs in professional development or within the MOB.
And I had one other question. So when we do a more common training, there was some issues, as I understand it, when people tried to go to their MOB to get that covered for their staff, particularly when it came to common costs. So I'm just wondering if you're looking at that issue where it's a larger training, what can be attributed to common costs under professional development as opposed to specific for the individuals who are accessing the training. I just think we need a little more clarity so that when the MPs are looking to offset these costs, which makes sense, and as I say, it's actually, in my view, underutilized for what's available, that they know where to go with their claims.
St. George?
Absolutely, and it's something we'll take back, the administration, and do further analysis.
Thank you.
Madame de Bellefeuille.
Oui, Monsieur le Président. D'abord, je tiens à vous.
Mr. Chair, I want to congratulate you. I've seen all the documents. You've done a lot of modernization efforts. When it comes to professional development budgets, and in line with the different provisions, every employer today needs to make sure that they focus on development, professional development to support them. It's all about leadership coming from the boss. At the Bloc Québécois, members have participated to support and to hone the skills of their employees. This is very important to us because if we want to retain staff, we need to support them, especially when it comes to professional development. It's not because it's not underutilized that it's not useful. Maybe we can ask the question to members who have staff, how come they're not using it? When they have the action plan, how come there's no training? Why is not that prioritized? I think today in 2024, it should be part and parcel of the priorities of every boss. And we know that the member in the writing, it's up to him or to her to receive that promotion, and it's up to them to set up that program. So you have my support 100%. Of course, in light of the discussions we've had, Monsieur Saint-Georges, I was there at the BOIE when Mr. Arlene proposed this pilot project of $5,000. It's been made permanent, but it was a bit rigid. For my conservative member, and the number you've put forward, maybe it's just an idea. I guess it's an idea of the use of the 5,000 budget. But a lot of office writings need to submit expenses related to training, but wasn't assigned to this $5,000 budget. So we can take part in a training, but when it comes to per diem or travel expenses, it was not part of the $5,000 budget. So it doesn't give us a big picture of the usage of those expenses. So your proposal is much more flexible, much more interesting, to encourage members to say, well, if you want to organize 1 or 2 training sessions, now you can take into account those per diems, travel expenses, organize various training sessions. So it opens up new possibilities. It's more flexible, and we're encouraging MPs to take part in training and to make sure that we're spending the amount that's in the budget. There's a lot of enthusiasm. People want to set this up, and we hope that next year you'll have better results when it comes to the participant rates and the money that's been earmarked for training. I'm very proud of your work. It wasn't very easy to put this in place. So I just wanted to congratulate you, congratulate your team. We have to make sure that we're in line with priorities set up by human resources. I can see that you worked together to modernize your processes. And with public disclosure, everyone can see that we can see how many is spent on training. We can see how many is spent by different offices. I'm very proud of the work you've done, and I hope that I've managed to convince my Conservative member to accept your proposals, because I think we're on the right track and we're better supporting our teams when it comes to professional development. Thank you very much.
Julien.
Thank you, Mr. Julien. Yes, I would also like to say I support these proposals, and I would like to thank you for the work you have done on this. Professional development is fundamental, both to make sure that we continue to keep people, job retention, that people have the opportunity to develop their skills. In our area in Westminster, Burnaby, there are about 1,000 people that receive assistance in handling sometimes very complicated files. My team works on that, and every time we have had an opportunity to take advantage of this professional development, there was full participation by my team. These funds were used, and my team has developed even greater skills in providing public services. It's very good in terms of retention of our employees and also providing improved quality of service. I think it's clearly a success, and the proposal before us provides a better framework. And this is all in the interest of public service. I think it's very important that the government should work in the best interest of the population. I'm not one of those who would say, oh, let's just slash services, everything will be fine. We have to provide a better level of service, and professional development provides us that opportunity to improve service levels. So congratulations, and I fully support these proposals. Thank you, Mr. Julien. And based on some of the comments I have heard, some of the positive comments towards you and your team, Mr. Saint-Jean, I think there is a consensus favoring the 4 recommendations. And maybe just coming back to the issue of the cost, the administrative cost for these training programs. So do we have consensus here?
Congratulations for those 4 items. Colleagues, we will now move on to number 5, which is the Internal Audit Charter and the Audit for Improvement Plan and Annual Report for 2024. We have Ms. Ruff, who is here with us today, who is our Chief Audit person. So, Ms. Ruff, I turn it over to you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here today to present the Internal Audit Charter and the Activities Plan for 2024, as well as the 2023-24 Audit and Improvement Annual Reports. We carry out impartial studies in the administration of the House to assist the organization to work in a smooth and efficient manner. The responsibilities and powers that shape our functions are included in our Internal Audit Charter. And there are some minor changes to the Charter this year in order to better align the Charter with the new professional standards of the Internal Audit Institute. The significant change was to clarify the role of the BOIE in the approval of the Charter and the audit plan. The activist plan for 2024 to 2025 describes the missions that we have chosen and that are aligned to the administration's priorities. This year, we are trying to make sure that there is insurance on travel and an audit of the supply and a study of the customer service.
2023 to 2024 fiscal year highlights our most recent assurance engagement on overtime, the objective of which was to assure that internal controls were in place and working effectively with respect to overtime transactions. As well, the report summarizes the results of the follow-up on management actions to address previously completed engagements. Given the results of these engagements, as described in the report, there are no significant issues or risks at this time that require the attention of the board. I welcome any questions the board may have. Thank you. Merci.
Questions and commentary, colleagues? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Ruff, and congratulations. Oh, just before we go, avez-vous une question, Madame de Bellefeuille?
Do you have a question, Madame de Bellefeuille? No question, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ruff. So we'll now move to the close in-camera session that we will have. So we'll just take a couple of minutes for us to switch over. Meeting suspended.